Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Nick, the chair of the Ward 8 Steering Committee, NPA Steering Committee. We'll begin tonight with some introductions. I'm Ryan, and we'll go this way. Or do you want to start and we'll go this way?
Sure. Hi, all. Thanks for coming. My name is Merrick Broderick. I'm the city councilor for Ward 8.
Hi, I'm Stella. I'm on the steering committee. I live at Spear Street on the UVM campus.
Yeah, hi, Tom Carroll. I'm on the steering committee. I live on Union Street next to these two fine candidates for public service.
Hi there, I'm Veronica. I'm a senior at UVM. I live on Adams Street.
I'm Kathy Alwell. I live on North Prospect in Ward 1, and I'm the progressive candidate for city council.
I'm Colleen Siren, and I'm just a Ward 1 resident.
Microphones are actually for the online, not for the people in the room. So, yeah.
My name is Ann Brenya, and I live on Bradley Street in Ward 8.
Lynn Goyette, South Union Street in Ward 8.
Eileen Blackwood, South Union Street, Ward 8.
Rob Gutman, I live on North William Street.
I'm Allie Schachter. I'm also an East District City Council candidate.
Oh, are we all introducing ourselves? Okay, I'm Megan Moyer. I'm the division director for water resources and gonna talk to you a little bit today about the bonds.
Hi. They're going to microphone. Yes, please. Yes.
Hi, I'm Matt Price. I'm from Ward 1, but I am running for the school board commissioner.
I'm Ashley Parker. I'm with the city capital program director, talking to you today about the general obligation bonds.
I'm Mary Danko. I'm from the Fletcher Free Library, and I'm here to support Ashley to talk about our capital fund.
I'm Sam Doherty. I live on Colonial Square.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is public forum. Do we have anyone here for public forum?
Have we adopted the agenda?
Have we adopted the agenda? No. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Sure, I'll motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Cool. Those in favor? Wonderful. Those opposed? Great. We've adopted the agenda. Anyone here for public forum? Seeing none, we will move right along, somehow ahead of schedule, to the water department bond presentation.
I just get my presentation up, but thank you so much for having me here. I don't know how many of you have heard some version or watched something. Okay. But are there a few of you who have heard nothing about the proposed bonds? Very little. Very little? Okay. Sorry, the computer's taking a smidge.
And also, thank you for joining us. Your request to present got caught in the spam filter a couple of times.
It's okay. And then I have to remember
much.
that not everybody's public forum is as long as city council public forum, because I usually arrive right around the time that I'm supposed to be on. And if you could promote me, that would be awesome.
So thank you for accommodating us.
Of course, I really appreciate the time. Let's see, join as panelists. And let's see. At least it's warming up ever so slightly out there. At least it kind of feels like it's warming up. There we go. So I have the pleasure of, sorry, not entirely with it because I'm coming from the office where I was trying to finish things. Okay. So this is sort of a condensed presentation from the really big long ones I was giving in November, and then has the updates that I've been sharing with the city council and others. But I did want to make sure that folks knew a little bit about the work that we've already accomplished with previous bonds. So in 2016, we had a $8.34 million water bond. And with that money, we've been able to reline or replace about 9.3 miles of our I just learned today that it's no longer 110 miles. We've actually found more pipes. It's 130 miles of water main. Yay, more assets. But, this has been a cool thing. It's a little scary what that picture looks like, but that's a pretty typical picture for our older water mains. The stuff on the inside is what we call tuberculation. Really cool word. You can throw it around at dinner parties. And it's essentially like rust, naturally forming deposits. It's the reason why when we flush hydrants or if we have a water main break and we turn it back on, you'll sometimes see that reddish discoloration. It can sometimes stain your laundry. We have stuff at the office for that if that ever happens. But basically the relining process goes through, drills all of that out to the original pipe and then puts a new pipe on the inside. That pipe on the inside, we're estimating has about a 50-year lifespan. A brand new water main can have in the 75 to 100-year, but it's a pretty good return on investment. Interestingly, relining used to be the absolute cheapest methodology versus open dig replacement. With some of the costs of liners and epoxies and the things that we use, we're seeing it now kind of be a little bit more on par. And so we're have to be really careful about when and where we're using relining. Relining makes sense when we don't have space to build a whole new water main, when there's other utility conflicts where literally they built the water main up and down, and we don't want to get into that. Kind of like the work we're doing here on Main Street. It's a very, very complicated, and sometimes just going through and relining is a good way to go. So that was on the drinking water side. In 2018, you might recall, after a series of plant failures, and over which we discharged about 13 million gallons of untreated sewage into Lake Champlain. That was my second year in the job. It was not a fun year. But we tried to make the best of it, and we used best available data at the time to kind of come up with an additional package of things that we needed to do. And as a result of that, we've actually invested more than that, about $31.5 million of the 29.95 when all is said and done. And we've been able to do that because we've been leveraging the state revolving fund program, which often gives us subsidy money. So we're actually able to accomplish a little bit more with the authority that we have. Similarly, we've done a lot with that money. We've installed green stormwater infrastructure in the south end to tackle some of the stormwater that's driving one of our more active combined sewer overflows. Same as on the water side, we have relined and replaced about 8.6 miles of sewer and storm main. And we've replaced those systems that failed. We replaced the computerized control system and the 3 disinfection systems at all 3 plants. And the good news is that, we did this little report card of what things looked like in 2018 over here, and everything was in the C, D, and F category. No surprise that we then had those failures. With the money that we've invested, we're certainly seeing things get into the A category, meaning, they're good. We have no chance, there's no chance of failure, but we still have a heck of a lot of stuff in that C, D, and F. And so that's sort of what this is about, is continuing to make that report card look a heck of a lot better and basically look the way it should for a place like Burlington. So at the end of the day, we want to be building a system that is going to provide these sustainable services, not just for the current Burlington, but for the future Burlington. That includes replacing things that just need or sort of age-related replacement. But this turn of the wheel is also looking at making sure there's sufficient capacity for housing and other growth. I'll be honest that when we first started the planning for this project, it was back when zoning was still tight and we weren't really worried about all the growth that we're now anticipating. But when we calculated the numbers and we looked at the state's housing goals, this new plant, this new system will have capacity. I believe the estimate is for about 5,000 more housing units over this next 20-year period. Plants usually last for about 20 to 25 years, so we have to kind of look over the long range. We still have climate change impacts, particularly at Main Plant, which gets really influenced by storm events. And frankly, we have safety and code upgrades that we need to perform to make sure our workers are safe and also just make sure that their equipment works. I mean, if you can imagine showing up at your office every single day and, the copier doesn't work, the phone doesn't work, or has a really good chance of breaking, and then you have to figure out how to get it back online so that you can continue to do this job that you've dedicated your life to. On the lake side, just keeping these plants and our systems working results in avoiding these preventable beach closures. I can't prevent all beach closures, the stuff that happens due to climate change, all of the stuff that's being discharged from Vermont. I can't control that. I can advocate at the State House, but what we are trying to do is make sure for Burlington, when and where something could be prevented, we're going to try to prevent it. We are going to help with the bigger Vermont piece of reducing phosphorus discharges from our control. The plan that we're presenting, we've looked at different technologies for what's called tertiary treatment, which strips out the last bit of phosphorus that our current processes aren't removing. Our plants kick booty as far as phosphorus removal. It's like 92% removal, but there's still that little bit. And when you have a lot of wastewater, it can still result in many, many pounds that are going to the lake. And then we are still under regulatory obligations to continue the very long multi-decade fight on combined sewer overflows. So just a little bit about sort of the big chunky pieces of the money that we're asking, or we're trying to get to put on the ballot. On the wastewater improvements project, little bit of background, still blows my mind that we didn't have wastewater treatment until 1950s. So until 1950s, everybody's poop going right into the lake. It took until the 1960s to get that treatment on the river. Just blows my mind. 1973, yay, Clean Water Act, a lot of funding, a lot of like, hey, we need to do even better. That was one upgrade that happened. And then 1994 was the last time that we did a substantial upgrade. You will calculate that is more than 20 or 25 years. That is 30 years. And that is one of the reasons why we really got to get with the program. You can probably I'll make sure you have a copy of this presentation, but it's 5 main buckets that we're looking at: resiliency, that environmental piece of improving the water quality for Lake Champlain, that really important capacity piece, and making sure that I'm not going to be in a place where we get a housing project, the right housing project. They ask for a letter saying, yes, we can serve you. And I say, I'm going to have a hard time because I know my plant doesn't have enough flow capacity or treatment capacity to be able to handle the 1,000 more toilets that are going to be hooking up. The work safety piece, and then the odor control piece. I mean, has anybody smelled the main plant? Sometimes it smells okay, and sometimes not as much. And for those of you who haven't done a tour, I really encourage you to come on a tour. It is an olfactory tour as well. But you can actually sense the cleanliness of the water and what's happening, because by the time you get to the last part of the process, it doesn't smell like what it smelled at the beginning, and it's kind of cool.
These open to the public?
They are. We're mostly focusing right now on trying to get through some of the city councilors, but we'll probably start redoing them. Hopefully before the bond vote. I don't know if we're going to get them before all of the ballots go out, but. So the chunky project on the drinking water side, so this is about 10 million of the 20 million that we're asking for, is for improvements at the reservoir. Anybody recognize this cute little house? It's not the Burlington's most wanted Airbnb, although I've thought about that. This is the 1867 gatehouse that was built for the reservoir, which has also been there since the late 1800s. There was originally one, I can't remember if it was the north or the south, and then we built another one when Burlington bought the Burlington Aqueduct Company, but those things have been up there for a really long time. And that little house has been up there for a really long time, and as many of you who may have old houses, it's not in great shape. The floor is sagging. The floor holds very, very, very important pumps. So this system in particular, it's critical for the entire city. The storage itself, the 7 million gallons, sort of acts as a demand fluctuation. It manages the demands that the entire city puts on the system. It also is emergency storage. If we have an issue at the drinking water treatment plant, we have about 24 hours. We can shut the plant off, stop withdrawing water from the lake, and we've got 24 hours of storage in the reservoir to figure it out. Little Iron Chef engineering has to happen. So it's very important for the whole city. It is extremely important for the area in blue, which includes the hospital, the region's only level 1 trauma center. The only way for us to supply water to them is from these pumps that are in that dilapidated but cute structure. So the money that we're going to spend, there's some internal photos. It's a little hard to capture. That's what the basement looks like. We've been monitoring some cracks that are continuing to widen. When we do a scoring, again, a simplified scoring, we're finding Many of these systems have not been upgraded in decades. About 65% of those systems are at a C grade or worse, with a heck of a lot at that D or F. And it's too much risk for Burlington, let alone for one of our very important customers. And we have had conversations with them about the importance of this project and how they can help advocate for some additional funding. Does anybody have any questions just about the projects themselves before I get into this? Okay. So if you have seen previous presentations, and look, the number I'm going to show you is not a small number, but it is a smaller number than the previous number that I showed, which I think was in the order of like $204 million for wastewater. The reason why that number has shrunken is not because we've magically decided we don't need to do these other projects. It's because we heard community feedback, we heard council feedback. It's a really big number. Are you sure you need all of that? What if we get grants, so on and so forth? And, those are all really good questions. We're at an initial stage. The numbers are very preliminary engineering, lots of contingency. It could go down. And I do in particular think that the main wastewater treatment plant project is going to be highly eligible for grants. If there's grant money available at the state, which there's a lot of things going on that could change that, but if there's money there, we think we should be able to grab it. And so I very much hope that now by splitting things out, so the stuff that I was originally presenting was the stuff all in yellow, which included both stage 1 and stage 2 wastewater improvements. Now we're just going to focus on stage 1 for this first bond vote, which is bringing it down to 152 million on the lake side or wastewater and stormwater side, and then 20 million on the water side. But I'm trying to be really clear that they're essentially one big project that we're cleaving in two, and that the stuff that we're doing to main plant, we are making it bigger for this additional capacity, and so that we can actually bring one of the small plants, the one that's on Riverside, turn it into a pump station, and then bring the flow to main plant so that payers for the future, we're not trying to maintain 3 plants because it's a lot. A pump station is a lot easier to take care of. And we're putting a lot of resources into main plant to make it like the top of the line system with the phosphorus removal and whatnot. So when we ran the numbers of how much it would cost and what it would cost over 50 years to keep East Plant going, it's kind of a no-brainer, even though it's going to be fairly fun to try to weave our way across the city to get to main plant. So I want to be clear, we will be coming back as early as 2027. Maybe we can push it off to 2028 for the balance of that wastewater work. I'm hoping it's a smaller number than what I have in some of my tables because of the grant funding, but it's going to be a number and we're going to have that conversation. The other piece that I don't have a number for now, but I am flagging for folks, is that our drinking water treatment plant is 40 years old, last upgraded in 1984. Drinking water is an easier environment than wastewater, so it can go a little longer, but it's your drinking water. You don't want to mess around with it. And so we're going to be doing a comprehensive look at that. There's a little bit of money in this 2025 bond, I think $3 million to take care of some things we just know we have to take care of. But we're going to be looking at 2 things, both from a capacity perspective, making sure we have enough capacity to support the growth, but also the ever-changing crystal ball of regulations. And if we think there's going to be additional regulations for drinking water. And we're seeing some changes in the lake, the raw water. It's making it harder to treat using our old processes. So we're going to be kind of taking a fresh look at all of that. So at the end of the day, we've got a $20 million drinking water bond, and then the wastewater and the stormwater. The charter and some of the authorities kind of consider them, they're both pollution control sort of utilities, and so they get lumped together in this other question, which we're calling the lake bond question, for that total of 152. This is there's a ton of material online now. I'm trying to be really careful about showing people all of our assumptions, right? So that we're not having to revisit things and people aren't saying that I, misled them in this round. But one of the things I've been really clear with, the rate projection or the rate model forecast that I'm going to show you, because I know stage 2 wastewater has to happen and I know what those numbers are, I've gone ahead and conservatively put those numbers in our rate model because I don't want the rate model to look really nice. And then all of a sudden we come back and now this, like, we know those things have to happen. So I plugged them in. But in general, so we've gone from I think it was 113% increase over a 5-year time period, and that's come down again. We believe it's conservative to about 89% over that same time period. We've actually provided, so it's not 89% all at once. It's not little hops. I would say fairly significant hops for multiple years. And then after 2030, based on current information, depends on the water plant, things start to taper off a little bit. We can get into, why do the rate increases have to be so long? Some of you may have heard that for, I think, 12 or 13 years in the 1990s, we didn't have a rate increase except for 1 year. These rate increases will not have to look like this had different decisions been made back then. We can't go back in time. I've tried. This is just a more detailed look, which you guys can zoom in on because it shows you the different components of your water resources bill. The blue bar is the water. You can see that budget is increasing, or that part of your bill is increasing a little bit, and the stormwater one is increasing a little bit, but it's really being driven by the wastewater. Want to remind people that we, with the help of the council, we were the first Vermont water resources utility to pass a affordability program. So that included adjusting some of our rate structures, but also providing, as an initial step, discounts to people on their water bill if they already qualify for a state or federal program. We don't have resources to do income verification. It's something we're looking into with the city because we'd like to be able to consider other income tiers, right? Because there's folks who are at that 200 or 185% of the federal poverty limit. They're getting that benefit. They're getting other benefits. But there's the people right above that we know are going to be, in particular, really pressured by these rates. We, from a policy perspective, really, really are committed to the fact that we don't want people, this phrase at the top, that an affordable water bill is one that a household can regularly and successfully pay without compromising its ability to meet on other essential needs, right? There's plenty of people who are going to be skipping out on healthcare, on food, high quality food, because they're trying to pay their bills. And that's not a thing that we want to see. So in the resolution that will be coming to City Council requesting authorization for these ballot items, there is a specific section in there, a statement about our commitment to study a few things and to come back with additional recommendations. Fairly soon here. Might not be for FY26. I have a couple of ideas. One of the really cool things we're trying to do, I don't know if anybody here is a renter, but if you're a renter, you don't often pay your water sewer bill directly. And so we don't have a way of getting you the money, but we know that your rents are probably going to go up when we do this to the landlords. And so we've been looking at a model from Seattle in which the water resources utility would actually give money to the electric utility, because most of you pay your electric bill, and they would provide a discount on the electric bill that kind of goes to buy down your overall utility costs. We think it could work. It seems feasible with BED, but we got to explore it further. But that's going to be our way to potentially be able to directly help renters. I'm going to be working my butt off to make these numbers smaller, to make the rate impact smaller. There's tons of different things, making sure that the state revolving fund loans are sufficient, and because they're not sufficient right now. There's a big shortfall when you look at all of what Vermont needs to do and how much money is available. We're going after grants. We are on the list for a congressionally delegated spending award for the reservoir project. I don't know. I've not been on that list before, so I don't know exactly when the money would come, but that would be for $1 million. Various other grant opportunities, meeting with the legislative delegation, the A&R secretary, and just making sure that people are aware of what's coming and how they can help us, particularly with the housing goal piece and with the environmental piece. So in summary, that's what I got. And if you are feeling one way or another, please come to the council meeting on the 27th or reach out with questions. We're building out our fairly extensive FAQ. So please send me your questions so I can add it to the list of things that I'm going to be typing this weekend in response. I think that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions?
What about historical? Because that building looks
It is historical, so we're not getting rid of it. We're building a new one and then we're mothballing it.
No, but I meant getting money from the
Oh, I don't know if we can.
historical preservation or
That's a good-
something. I mean,
That's a good idea. Yeah. I wonder if it's actually, I know it's on the American Water Works Association historical list, but yes, even if it hasn't been added, that's a good idea.
but it's almost the first thing you see when you.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, especially even if they just gave us the little bit of money that, to mothball it appropriately and not do what, one tends to do, which is like just barely fix it. Thank you. That's a good idea.
There's an online question about like where they could find an electronic copy of this.
I'll send you this just now and you can, I don't know, post it on the agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Before I leave, because otherwise it might not happen. Any question you've ever had about water, wastewater with the.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
If anybody has the opportunity to take the tour, take the tour. It's really fascinating.
It's really cool stuff.
And it's.
Which plant is toured?
The main plant.
On the waterfront?
Yes. Yep. I suppose we could tour the other ones, but it's sort of the most interesting one.
There's one in the New North End by,
At the very, very.
Norway. Where's the third?
Riverside. Used to be, I always said you'd drive, you'd smell donuts, then you smell barbecue, and then you'd smell something else.
So is it by the gas station?
Here, let me get the map up.
It's right by the turn.
It's right there. Yeah, you can't really
What's
see
it,
it.
Prospect Street? No.
By Salmon Run. Or
By Salmon Run.
Yes, around that area.
Oh, so down Intervale.
No, it's on Riverside.
It's on Riverside. Okay.
Kind of down. There's a gate. It's inconspicuous.
Near Bluebird.
It's not far from Bluebird.
So I smell like small barbecue and
On the same side.
Thank you.
The tour was terrific.
I have localized it now.
yeah, so that would turn into a pump station. So the flow would still all go there. And then you have giant pumps that then pump it to the top part of the gravity system for main plant. Because it will be extra flow and because we certainly don't want to be causing backups or anything, that's part of what we have to study. We may have to make some pipes bigger along the way, which could be cool because there's already pipes in the old North End that need to be fixed or replaced because they're so old. And so there's some synergy of like, oh, if we run it this way and we are already taking care of a pipe, which I already thought I needed other money for, right? We try to be as smart with the money as we can.
If you needed a name for the drinking water treatment thing, you could do the Burlington Reinvestment in Treatment Aquatics.
There you go.
For Brita.
There you go. we have mixed feelings about filters.
Yeah. Sorry. I didn't know if that'd be appropriate or not. But anyways, otherwise, thank you. All good on water, everyone? Yes.
Chat with any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Down to 20 minutes. I guess we get started earlier.
Got that dialed in. All right.
Probably talk about it in my sleep. How are you? Good.
Shawty, can you pull my phone?
Oh yeah, of course. I got you.
Oh.
Use extra piece of felt.
Yes, he insisted that I put my own homemade stickers on. So all right. Just start, take off. All right. I'm Ashley Parker. I'm the city's capital program director. And I'm here today to talk to you guys about the 20 million general obligation bond that we've been talking about for the last at least feels like more than a couple of months. Maybe it was really just a month. Yeah, you can move to let's go to slide 3. And I'll just kind of kick it off by going through capital in general and what I'm talking about tonight when I talk about general fund capital. The city defines capital as a project that is funded by the city that generally involves construction, remodeling, purchases of fleet vehicles, streets, bridges, sidewalks, parks, park improvements, building improvements. It does not include things that would be captured under like an annual routine repair or maintenance expenditure. And so those things are not included in this budget. The general fund capital team includes our DPW fleet, streets, sidewalks, traffic safety, our parks team, our central facilities team, police, fire, and our IT team and public art. So it's really all those departments that don't have any other funding outside of the general fund. So this is where they come to for their capital needs. Next slide. So why are we here? Why are we talking about this and why another bond? So I'm sure you remember that in 22, we got voter authorization for a $23.8 million general obligation bond. The city, without this supplemental funding, the city only has a $2 million allowance in the city charter for general fund capital projects. My current 5-year capital project plan is showing at least an $8 to $10 million annual need for capital projects. And this is really focusing on our more critical infrastructure. So in order to try to get closer to a $10 million goal for the next few years, this $20 million bond is really critical to helping us get to that point. You'll see in my table on this slide that it shows how we would project to spend out the money. And one other way that we've gotten to this point is, I think many people are continuing to be aware of inflation impacts. We continue to see inflation impacts in all of our projects, whether it's design or construction. So we're still trying to figure out how to better plan and manage for that, but here we are. All right. The next few slides are going to show you what our actual needs are. And so, as I said, these are really the things that we can't do without and that we absolutely need. The first one on my list is our general fund fleet. We have had to defer replacement of general fund fleet for the last 2 fiscal years because there wasn't funding to do so. And this would include things like our fire trucks, our ambulances, our police cruisers, plows, sidewalk tractors. We have 242 assets on the general fund side, and 30% of those currently need to be replaced. And then another 45% of that are connected to some form of public safety for the city. So this is one that is high on my list. It is a must. We need to do that. And for FY26, I'm estimating at least a $3 million need for fleet would come out of this bond. Next up on the list is our sidewalks. I think all of us value sidewalks. So we have 133 miles in the city of sidewalk network. And Tech Services, our DPW team, estimates that about 3 miles of sidewalk should be replaced every year in order for us to maintain and keep up our network. Right now, it's costing about $1 million a mile to replace sidewalks. And so if you take that times the goal of 3 miles, it's $3 million a year. So we have to find money to secure that and make that possible. Because right now we're projecting 17 miles of sidewalk that are in serious or poor condition throughout the city. Go to the next one. Streets are on the list as well. We own and maintain 88 miles of street in our city. And the same Tech Services, again, they estimate at least 4 miles should be paved annually in order to do our proper maintenance of the network of the streets. Streets cost a little bit more to pave, not replace. It is about $1.2 million a mile. So we're looking at about $4.8 million to meet that goal. Right now, the mileage of not meeting acceptable condition is just under 11. So this is another big one on our list. On the same slide, you'll see transportation safety. And in this section, I've combined a couple of things. I have included our bridges and also our transportation calming safety projects. So right now in my capital plan, we have 3 bridges that are noted, but the more focused one for this bond ask is our Winooski Bridge project, which I'm sure you guys have heard about. And if not, you should check it out. It's a really important project, a regional project, and we have a local match requirement that we need to fund to support the project of about $4 million, which I would hope to have come out of this bond. Otherwise, that we can't meet our local match requirement obligation. But this bridge is a really important, critical piece of infrastructure that connects us, Winooski, regionally, and so it's really high on the list. I cannot forget our transportation calming and safety projects. Again, Tech Services has a really good planning program. We know right now that at least $300,000 a year could help us reach about 14 new temporary or permanent some kind of traffic calming installation, whether that is, narrowing of a street, installation of bump outs or something, various measures that we could install to make things safer in our city at intersections or in our neighborhoods, crosswalks. And they have told me that they have at least 56 community requests for traffic safety measures in our city. And a $300,000 a year mark would help us reach at least 75% of those requests over the next 3 years, which would be really great. All right, my buildings one is, and again, really, really important. We have a lot of deferred needs in our city buildings, and we're in one of our city buildings. It is a very important space for all of our residents, for all of our city staff. We own 19 buildings throughout the city, and each one of these buildings has at least $700,000 of needed deferred maintenance or improvements. That includes City Hall, that includes Fletcher Free Library, it includes our fire stations, our police station, the Miller Center. So we have a lot of need in some very important buildings in our city that provide a lot of services to all of our residents. So that's, again, another one that's really high on my list. And I have on this slide that an estimated, if we had $2 million, that could potentially go to support projects at 3 different buildings in the city. Last but not least is our parks. We have 37 city parks all across the city, and there are needs in every single one of those parks. Right now, it's a similar estimate for how much need we have per park as with our city buildings. This last bond supported work at Oak Ledge, the universally accessible playground, for example. So there are similar projects all across the city, including Perkins Pier, Harbor Marina, ongoing work over at North Beach. There's just everywhere there's something that we need to do. Next slide. All right, this is a newer slide I added over the last few meetings that we've had with folks. It's just to give you a sense of if we receive voter authorization to go out and get a $20 million general obligation bond, what are some ways that we could allocate that funding? So there are no project in my capital plan is guaranteed funding. There are lots of steps to go through. We want community feedback. We have to work with the city council. We have to work as an internal city team. And so there's a lot of decisions to be made, but this gives you a sense of how we might allocate across projects. It also takes into account the capital plan changes all the time, and new needs come up or new emergent needs come up, and those automatically take the place of something else on the list. So it has to be a little bit flexible in order for us to make sure that we're doing the best projects that we can. Next slide. All right, and this is my very exciting slide. I'm very excited about this slide. We have a new tool for the city that I really hope you will take some time to check out. It's basically taking the 5 to 6 year capital plan that we had approved by the city council this past year, and it puts it into a map so that you can zoom in and out of. You can go check out your neighborhood. You can see where all of the capital need is across the city for the next 5 to 6 years. And the goal with this map is to have it become a long-term tool that we can use to plan out our projects. So we can have a sense of where we have the most need, where are our overlapping needs, how can we target resources, how can we structure grant applications. There's a lot of opportunity with this map. It's very new. It is in early stages. I hope we can continue to refine it, add new data. One of the really cool things that we have added in this, if you go in and check it out, is we have a community survey that will stay open, I'm hoping forever, because I want to continue collecting community feedback. So you guys can let us know what you see out in your neighborhood. Let us know what you think is the highest priority. You can help us prioritize the different qualities and characteristics, criteria that we look for in projects. So this is a way for us to put some community input into our overall planning strategy. So please check it out and share it with your friends and neighbors. Let us know what you think, what's not working so well. Yeah, it's a brand new tool for us. So, yes.
Okay, so will this be permanently available on the city website as opposed to just on the town meeting day website?
Yes, eventually it will be. Right now it's living there. I actually don't even have, the general fund capital program doesn't even have its own page on the city website. So that is something that once we get through this, that I'm hoping to build out something that will talk about the general fund capital as a whole. So this would live there and you would find other information about other projects, the budget, and all that kind of stuff there. I've also, just to point out too, I've heard from folks, there's not enough information about the projects in the map, and that it's great feedback because we've actually been working on one-pagers that we want to connect and link into the map so people can also learn more about some of the different projects. Some of the projects are very vague because that's how it shows up in the budget. It doesn't give you all the detail you might possibly need to understand what something is doing. So we're working on that. That is something that will also be available too. All right, next slide. All right, so the big piece of this, what is the tax impact? So affordability is hugely important to this administration, to really all of us. I live here too. And we are truly working to balance our investments, making sure that we are spending wisely and efficiently and sustainably. This isn't going to be the long-term solution for the general fund capital plan. We know that there needs to be another piece of how we fund this program for the long term. So we are working on many different ways to do that. One of the other things that the city is doing right now is the FY26 budgeting process is well underway. And one of the big goals of that is to make things more efficient and also incorporate maintenance budgets into our operating budgets so that we can put some more investments in before things turn into a bigger problem that then lands on my capital project list. So hopefully in the long term, there will be a lot of efficiencies and savings hit with that. And then, we also will continue to work hard to leverage any funds that we have to bring in more money to help us do projects. So one of the things that was really great with the last bond is we were able to take about $5 million of that bond and bring in a little more than $7 million in federal and state grants to help us complete projects. We have lofty goals with the next, this next bond. But, I think we will never stop looking for supplemental funds. That will always be a piece of the work that we do. And it is huge actually in getting this work done, is being nimble and thrifty. All right. The next slide has a really, complicated fun graph, if you like your table graphs or your bar charts. But we do recalculate. Folks who know about our debt policy, the city does look at that every single year, and we recalculate every single year. We look at, this is an overlapping question with the school and the city's debt. And the team in the CET office, clerk treasurer's office, has reviewed this and feels very confident that we are this request fits within our existing debt policy. Due to growth in the grand list and the payments of unexpected increase in payments for both interest and principal for our existing debt has helped us create a bit of a gap that allows us to free up additional 20 million for this ask. All right. And then I think this is my last data heavy slide, but I showed the one table on the right there earlier, but it's really important to note the spend out over time. So if we do receive this authorization, we would not draw down $20 million in FY26. That's not what would happen. We would spend it out over the next 3 years so that we can achieve our goal of the $10 million a year for the budget. This would lead to a maximum increase of approximately $12 a month on a $500,000 house. And as we continue to pay down debt over the next 20 years, this dollar amount could even be less than that. But the maximum impact will be $12 on the $500,000, or you can look and see other home value assessments there. All right. And I think this is a little bit of an outdated ending slide for next steps, but we're continuing our conversations with the community. We'll be at, well, I guess we're not doing another NPA until in February, but we're hitting up City Council on Monday, hoping to get these bond issues on a ballot. So please come and listen to us if you want, see our presentations, but feel free to reach out to me and ask questions, check out the map. Yeah. I really appreciate your time tonight and attention.
Thank you.
I'm sure you said this and I just didn't get it, which is what's the timing of the spend of this?
Yes. Can you go to the slide before this? Yeah. So our first draw would be in 26, and right now I'm projecting a $7 million draw. So if you look at that,
Oh, I see.
yeah, so it's that second line there, third line. But yes, so that would be the projected spend out over time.
And then my sort of second question with that is how long term do we have a capital plan right now?
I have in the plan, the map that you would see is 6 years. We had a 5-year plan approved by council in the FY25 budget process. The city had a 10-year plan. It was before I started here. It was probably like 2018. We've moved it to a 5-year plan that I'm hoping to renew every year with budget approval because the plan changes so much. So right now we're aimed at 5-year annual plan or capital plan updates. So it'll be more accurate, hopefully.
Could you go to the previous slide? And
Just put your microphone over here, please.
and could you zoom in on and explain to me the two orange
School
areas because I
districts.
can't read it.
That's the school district. That's the school bond.
That's the school bond is the orange.
Yeah. So the biggest issue with our debt capacity at this point is the school bond. Our stuff is in the most of our stuff is that green. The green is pre-23, and then the lightish yellow on top of the big orange, which is the school bonds, is what additional city debt has come in. And then the bottom line, the blue, dark blue one, is the old school debt that's still being paid off.
And then how does the water bond affect this chart as well? Because
it's separate. Water is separate. It's a revenue bond. And so it does not impact this debt capacity at all. It's separate.
So we don't threaten anything by putting both.
Correct, because this is all taxpayer, and then all of my money that I can use only comes from ratepayers. So the twain do not mix.
Okay.
As much as sometimes I would like.
So this is what has an impact on taxes, and that has an impact on
the rates. Yes, correct.
To some degree with water rates, you have a little more, you have a little control, right? If you use more water or less water, your bill can.
So take that microphone. Take that microphone.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering, I was kind of struck by like the difference in like our annual projected like sidewalk repairs and street repairs and how much we have to do. And I'm just kind of wondering like how we kind of got into this situation. Are we kind of catching up from COVID or is it, something else?
That's a great question.
I know, sorry, it's a big one.
No, but it's a good question. I think I said at the beginning of this presentation, but the goal for me for this $20 million is to truly focus on our critical need, which includes actual care of our existing infrastructure. And I think that maybe that wasn't necessarily the priority in historic asks, if that makes sense. So we know what the need is. The one thing that the DPW team does have is they have dedicated tax called street capital that comes in, and they can use that as some offset to do some additional work. It just hasn't been enough to hit the targets every year. And of course, when you're already behind, it gets even harder to play catch up. So it's like you're always playing catch up and trying to meet a goal. So with this, the goal is to try to meet that, $3 million a year need for sidewalks, $4 million a year need for streets, so that we can actually make some progress and get more caught up than we are. Yeah. And also, you can't really get grants for maintenance of streets and sidewalks. Nobody wants to give you grants for maintenance. It's not exactly the most exciting thing. So that is another challenge. But, hopefully if we do more collaborative planning with our mapping tool, we can maybe find ways to be more creative in how we fund it too. So, yeah.
As a online question, can you speak to what interest rate you use for your tax calculations?
Interest rate. I did not calculate it. I would have to find out. But I can find out.
You have a question?
I do.
Okay. I guess this question occurred to me after your question. What do other cities do? I mean, they must have the same problem with having to invest in infrastructure, and their regular city budget doesn't cover it. How do they address that shortfall?
Sure. So I have done some review of, not that this program is not well organized, but there are bigger cities with more well organized capital programs. I have seen things like capital reserve funds where you actually have, and it comes from tax dollars, but you have a special fund that you set aside to be that supplemental source of fund. There's no cash that comes into the capital program outside of dedicated tax dollars that I can use to offset any capital projects at this point in time. We don't have that. So having some cash would give us some more flexibility to how we go after some of our different financing tools, like loans. Loans you can't pay back with bond proceeds. You need cash. So that would make us more nimble. We're looking a lot at partnerships too right now to see how we could leverage some different opportunities in the city to do projects by working more with other groups. That's another tool that I've seen. But a lot of them do these big. Capital bond asks. So this is a pretty common method of doing that work. But I think the bigger ones use a lot of the combination of those different tools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Have you done any projections based on increase in proposed housing in Burlington and how that may affect us?
That's a good question too. It would increase the grand list, which would probably reduce the impact across the board. But I don't think that the current models they've run, I don't know that it. I don't know. I will ask and find out because they were working with the assessor to put the ground list numbers into the table. I just don't know what projections he would have used to come up with that, but I can ask and I'll see how we're looking at that.
This might be a silly question, but I know that we kind of said that ratepayers that's what's contributing to the water bond and taxpayers are contributing to this funding. Are businesses paying any taxes towards this, or is it just residents?
Oh, for these projects?
Yes, yeah.
It's whoever's paying a property tax bill that would see the impact. It's the debt service tax rate is what pays for the debt service on our capital bond and the general fund capital bonds.
Okay, so I haven't heard anything about Memorial Auditorium. Is any of this money for Memorial Auditorium, or what's the update about Memorial Auditorium in that block? Please.
Another great question. So in the $23.8 million general obligation bond that the city received last, there was city council at the time when it was in FY23, set aside $1 million to be supportive of stabilization efforts at Memorial Auditorium. So that money has gone there and the teams have been working on the stabilization efforts to make it safe and in a good place. Right now, I know there are teams working on the Memorial Block project. There is movement on that project, but they're still in, early pre-development type negotiations about what's really going to happen next year. They've done a couple of surveys of the public to get input and information about what people would like to see in that area. But we have an interesting group of developers, and we are looking at our finance options actually too, and analyzing what kind of options we might have to bring various pieces to that block, whether it's affordable housing or, whatever it may be. I know it's connects to Mary's lot, so there's a lot of opportunities in that block.
So in this particular bond, there's no memorial.
No, not specifically. No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much. Should I send you answers to questions once I get them? So you can disseminate?
Yeah, I can put them on some sort of agenda or minutes or something of that nature.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll figure it out. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So I think we might, given that Councilor Bergman, did you want to present on the charter change thing, or should we wait for Councilor Bergman? Yeah. I think we might skip ahead if it's all right with you guys to the candidate intros and Q&A. So we have both the Democrat and Progressive candidate for the East District City Council with us tonight. We'll start with some candidate introductions, just a short bio, who you are, why you're running, that kind of thing. And then if anyone has questions from the public, we'll go to that. We'll start with Kathy.
I'm Kathy Alwell. I have been the Ward 1 and 8 school board member for 6 years. A year and a half ago, I left that. So for the 6 years before that, I served you all as a school board member. And I have lived here in the city for 33 years, 25 of them in Ward 1. The first 6 were in the new North End, where I also served on the school board for 4 years during that time. I have 3 sons. My husband and I moved here from Germany. He is German. I am American. Our sons actually, my oldest son, 2 of my sons live in Burlington. The oldest one actually has 4 children that go to school here in Burlington at SA. We have kids in the same school. So I am a social worker by profession. I have worked for Sarah Holbrook and King Street for most of the time that I've lived here. I started the new North End Youth Center, which is up in what is the Miller Center. And it was a National Guard Armory when we started in 94, but there was no youth serving agency up there. And at the time, a majority of the city's children lived in the new North End, and they were very, it's a very mixed end of town. I know a lot of people never understand that, but we have the whole gamut of the wealthy on the lake to, we have subsidized housing, a lot of it. I don't know if we have as much as, if we're more than what there used to be, but we were at the time when I started the youth center, there were more subsidized housing up there than there was, say, in the South End or in central city. So I also started the after school program at Hunt, but the head of King Street and myself went to the city schools and said, there's this large federal grant out there called oh God, now I'm going to forget the name of it, but it's communities. Forget it. It's at any rate. We went and said, well, could we go and apply for it? But we can only do it with schools. So you would have to write the grant, but we would go to the bidders conference in Washington and look at this and come back and give you a report, which we did. The schools decided to go for it. It is the basis of it is the federal funding for all of the 9 schools after school programs that we have. And I designed and ran the one at Hunt, and then also started the middle school summer program, which was for all of both middle schools in Burlington, and it also included Winooski after a few years. So that's what I've done, and I'm looking for your vote.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Allie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Schachter. I live in Ward 1. Kathy and I don't live too far from each other. And I have a first and a third grader at the Sustainability Academy. And I do love that your grandkids and my kids are quite good friends, and it's very sweet. I co-chair the PTO there, and I work at the Flynn. Love this community. I'm very excited to be running for the East District seat for City Council. My professional background is prior to joining the Flynn, I spent about I'll back up a little bit more. In college, I studied environmental science and policy, and I came from a family where we were building solar panels when I was growing up. And, so really, cared deeply. I spent a lot of my childhood up here on Lake Champlain, and, this place, this lake have a deep part of my heart, and I love living here. I'm very proud to be raising my kids here. And then I spent about the last 15 years before joining the Flynn in human services. So I spent about 10 years in youth homelessness and housing, basically at the equivalent of Spectrum here, but in Ann Arbor, Michigan, it's called Ozone House. And we had after school programs, street outreach programs, housing, transitional housing, emergency shelter. I loved that work, cared deeply about it, and then moved into child welfare reform work. So was working at the national level with jurisdictions across the country to try to help build a child welfare system that was much more responsive to family needs, much more racially just. Very often poverty is a proxy for neglect, and when families are being separated, it's only compounding trauma. So I was doing a lot of work to try to think about other ways to meet families where they're at and support them rather than separate them. So did that work. And now I'm at the Flynn. So that's a little bit about me. Very excited to be serving because, like I said, I care so deeply about this community. I love this community. I think we are a really specially sized city. We have a lot of neighborliness. We have so much passion. We're very forward thinking, and very proud to live here and would love to be a part of helping to continue us building into the city that I know we can be.
Thank you. Have any questions?
You're gonna do platforms, like what you're running on?
Like, speak to your platforms and your issues. I guess we'll go in reverse order.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would say my top issues are affordability and housing. I think we all feel and see so much of the challenges we're experiencing. We have too little housing. It's very hard. I think the cost of living here and wages don't match up in such a way where it's easy to live here and comfortably afford to live here. So I think about that a lot, and I care deeply about helping us continue to explore ways to expand the housing that is available, and you know how we work with UVM, how we can build sustainable housing, but also knowing that we have a severe housing shortage. And so thinking about that, I think community well-being and safety, and that we've just had there's so many people struggling in our community, and I see it every day. I walk to work every day, and knowing that a lot of people don't feel like this is the Burlington they used to live in from a safety standpoint. In so many ways, like I think that looks a million different ways for a lot of people, but I care deeply about helping to restore a sense of safety and vibrancy, and like this can be a thriving community. I do think our national leadership in climate work, I want us to continue that. I believe in that deeply. I know we've felt the effects of the flooding the last several summers. And so, you know, continuing to push us towards electrification. How do we make sustainable choices available to every resident of Burlington? So continuing to support us in our net zero energy goals and a lot of the work that's happening with BED. And then, you know, what I really care so deeply about is bringing a truly collaborative spirit to this work. You know, I often wish political parties weren't a thing, that we could just find ways to really come together, work together, build solutions, build a brighter Burlington together. And so I bring a deep and true commitment to listening to my constituents, to talking to everyone, to really being willing to roll up my sleeves and do the hard work to make progress for Burlington.
Well, I too care very much about housing and the affordability of housing. And I hope that we can really push housing, but I really want to see it affordable housing. And I mean, really affordable housing, because I think that, you know, for the impoverished of this city, they are leaving. I mean, we have far fewer of them at this moment, and that makes a rich community to have a very mixed, because that we can't keep pushing people out, especially also young people. They can't come move here. How are we going to grow a city if we don't have the housing to put them in? But I also feel very strongly, especially in watching these last two presentations, about taxation and how we tax, because most of our taxes, or a heavier portion of our taxes, are leveraged on the poor people in this city. And we need to figure out a way to do it more fairly. I also truly, and I know this, I watch this and I think, why are we not getting the taxes from the feds? And I'm sorry, the federal government is not taxing corporations in this country the way it should. And the fact that we're at a point where we have to decide between what, you know, clean water and what do you call it? Sewage. It's just, I mean, for me, I think, my God, that's the basic of what we need. And we really, I care very much about this city. And I care very much about all the people that live here. And I know that the Burlington I moved to 30 years ago had that. It had a wonderful base of people from all socioeconomic backgrounds. And I feel like Burlington is becoming this place that only the upper middle class can live. So those are the things that are for me the most important. And I'm hoping that I can work with you to push those forward, because some of those are things that you also are working.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? I don't know, I guess seeing none, if you could speak to maybe something in Ward 8 specifically you'd like to see change or add, or I don't know, address the.
Can I ask a question about?
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I think
I was
there,
just making that up, so God bless you.
speaking of housing, speaking of East District Ward 8, UVM housing, I read a report from, what's the name of the auditor? Hoffer. Doug Hoffer, yeah. Where he looked at the history of the pressures of the off-campus student population in Burlington, the pressures that it puts on the housing market. And he is advocating for UVM to build on-campus student housing. And I was just wondering if you agreed with that, and what specifically as a city councilor you would do to promote that.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I think that we have to be really strong with UVM on this MOU, that they need to cap the amount, they need to cap the students, the number of students, if they cannot find housing for them on their campus. There's other colleges here that are Champlain, a good portion of their students are on their campus. So I feel like they have enough land up there on the hill that they certainly could build more housing on campus. And I certainly don't know the logistics of getting them to cap, but maybe we work with our delegation in Montpelier to push that, because I think that's something they have to do.
Thank you. So yeah, I do also fully support UVM building more housing. I think it's necessary. And I think it matters for all of us. It's not just a Burlington, it's not just an off-campus problem. I also do think that it affects the student experience. I've heard students report, and students I've been talking to, that it's very hard for them to find housing. It's very stressful. It's very expensive. So I think this is an issue that Burlington and UVM can find common ground on caring about. My understanding is that we got pretty far along in an MOU process not all that long ago. And I know that we're working on the medical center MOU right now. As an East District City Councilor, I would be committed to making sure that MOU with the university, that we revisit that as soon as this other MOU with the medical center, which is in process. My understanding is it kind of goes one at a time. And then, I spent almost a decade in Ann Arbor for my husband's grad school, and we lived there for a long time. And, I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, I'm really interested as we think about solving this issue, and what are some other university towns doing? How do they navigate it? Because we're not unique in having these issues. So, I would, as counselor, really try to do my homework and figure out like what's working in other places. And then also, encourage us to go back to that MOU that was quite far along not that long ago, see if we can't get it across the finish line.
Great. Good.
I have a question.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, public safety is a huge concern of mine. I'm over on Loomis Street, and definitely the theft is coming into the neighborhood in ways that I've not seen before. And I've done a lot of work in addiction research, and we have a huge problem. We need more policing, and we need a better relationship with the police force. And I would like to hear from both of you what your policy is on what you think should happen with the police force. What do we need? How do we begin to attract more people to the police force? How do we amend the relationship with the police force so that we're working closely with them in a way that is healthy for both? And then what do we begin to do about the addiction problem that we have, and what role should the community and the police force play in that?
Just over.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think this is the question of maybe the mayor hasn't answered. I'm just kidding. This is not a simple, there are no simple fixes here, right? But I think on the question of the police department, and where do we go from here? I think in many ways, the way that we're building out the police department to have CSLs and CSOs, I think a lot of that work is quite important. But at the same time, we do have a significant shortage of officers. And I think it has many, many impacts across the city and for the police department itself to be so short-staffed. I often say, one of the best leaders I ever worked with used to say that change happens at the speed of trust. And so, I think as a counselor, I would really work to find ways to just start to rebuild a really positive working relationship between the city government and the police department. And that would be listening, collaborating, asking questions, trying to find opportunities to work together and stand on common ground. And I would just really bring a willingness to, like, no matter how much, whatever's going on, like, we're in this together. And we've got to work through this together. So I would bring that approach to wanting to really solve some of these issues and look at what's helping with retention and recruitment around the country. Of course, again, we're not unique in having these issues. These are bigger than us, but I also think we are a very special place. And if we can unlock some of what's hindering our ability to recruit and retain officers, I do think that in many ways we are a very attractive place to live and work. And so how do we lean into that and find ways to leverage our strengths to bring in, to help rebuild that department? On the addiction and mental health front, I think certainly, again, we're up against forces much greater than ourselves. This is a national epidemic. It's a crisis. It's horrific. It's so upsetting, and it's hard to see. I don't think there are any easy answers here. I think housing, mental health, substance use, these are all like deeply intertwined. So I think the more we can move positively in all of those spaces, including housing, affordable housing, the more we can move the needle on helping to solve some of these issues. I think there's a lot of strategies out there, a lot of which we're doing and in the process of putting in place, that we just have to keep being willing to work on that. I don't think there are any easy answers here around the mental health and addiction crisis, but it's certainly very real. I think we just need to keep exploring ways to find solutions together to work through that. I wish I had a better answer, not particularly specific.
I know that there was an internal questionnaire done within the police force. And I haven't seen it. I've just heard things about it that, I think that, yes, there is to some degree mistrust between the community. The police feel mistrusted in the community. But I also think that, for one thing, our present chief of police is leaving. And I know to some degree, from what I've heard only because I haven't read this internal questionnaire, that in some ways, shape, and form, they had problems with him as well, and that there was internal problems within the police force here. So I'm looking forward to having a new police chief, whoever he or she is, with the hopes that they can, and I'm looking to you, and to hire someone that really is flexible, can work with people well, and make sure, I mean, we've had problems with, officers really overreaching, and this city has spent millions trying to get us out of those schlemassels, so to say. And so I do think that they're on both sides, but I'm really looking forward to the new police chief because I think that is the key. They are the one that holds, so to say, the ability to keep their people with them or not with them. But I am very happy about the fire department and the police department hiring social workers and medical personnel to work with. We do have a drug problem, and that drug problem, and we have a huge mental health problem. And if people going out to, incidences are not trained to work with people with mental health and drug problems, and police aren't, and they have many times said in the past, I mean, but that isn't their main goal or their main training. And I have heard them themselves say that they don't feel trained well enough to deal with these. And a lot of times that's where the problems happen, that people are shot or because they didn't understand or what they were dealing with. So I think it is a huge problem that we have. But I really think that the city right now is working towards that. And I am very hopeful that will turn, it'll turn the corner soon. Where did I read that one of the shops, Outdoor Gear Exchange, is moving back to Burlington from Essex because they feel the city downtown is getting safer. And I think that's a good sign that we are turning a corner and that we are headed kind of in the right direction.
All right. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Obviously, Burlington is a community that really prizes direct democracy and direct connections with their representatives. So I'm just wondering if you both could speak to specific ways that you'll stay plugged into the needs and wants of your community outside of just the regular election cycle.
I guess it's me first. Yes, I have done this I've been a school commissioner for over 10 years in this city, in two different sections of the city. So I pride myself on really being open, and I give my telephone number out freely because I want constituents to call me, and they do. So yes, I would.
Yeah, I echo that. I in no way believe that I have all the answers or see. I think the diversity of perspectives and opinions and experiences that constituents bring is vital to being able to do the work of an elected representative. So always seeking this out, making myself available, being responsive. It is absolutely how I've been trying to conduct myself on the campaign trail, and would be what I would continue to bring as counselor. I'm always, my husband teases me, I'm always the last to leave a party because I could talk to everybody for hours. I deeply enjoy it.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I think we're more or less on schedule. And Councilor Bergman, sorry we rearranged you in the agenda, but we are ready for
all is good.
This redistricting charter change.
All is good.
And thank you, sorry, to the two council candidates for coming.
This is great. So, Ryan, you wanted me to talk about the charter changes that are going to be in front of all the voters on March town meeting day. And let me just point out that charter change law comes down from the state, and it requires, among other things, public hearings. And guess what? There is a public hearing, the last of the public hearings, on this coming Monday, on the 3 charter changes that we have put on the ballot. And the reason I, instead of some other city councilor, is up here doing this, I guess, is because I'm the chair of the Charter Change Committee. So for whatever that is worth, that's why I'm sitting here. There are 3 of them that we have put on the ballot. One is a charter change that the city of Burlington passed in 2014. I think Eileen Blackwood was the city attorney then, and I was an assistant city attorney at the time. And to ban firearms in bars. And this has languished. It passed with like close to 70% of the vote, and it has languished in Montpelier. And we have asked them every year to pass this because guns and alcohol do not mix. And they have not done that, but there is a growing, I think, belief that maybe this is a year that it can be done. And so the advice that we were given was, rather than just asking them to pass what we did, could we have another vote to reaffirm what the city of Burlington is supporting? And so you've got that. I've got them up here, but I'm not going to read them because it'll be crazy. So you're welcome. But I can tell you that they are posted right now on the calendar for the city council meeting on Monday, and they're posted in the public hearing sections there. And there's actually a public hearing that's noticed in the calendar too. Let me just sort of step back and say that when you have a crowded ballot, the city council has the authority to put what's called a short form on. It's sort of, we try to make it plain language, and city attorneys are the ones that are supposed to be writing it. And so we are going to, on Monday night, also vote to determine that we need to have a short ballot so that the actual ballot isn't a gazillion pages. And that is a summary, but the actual language, and you get to see in actual language things crossed out where you're taking them out, and things that are underlined that you're going to put in. So that should be in every voting booth, and it's available at the clerk, and it should be available online. I don't know what they're mailing in terms of whether it will be in the packet that you'll get with your ballot, because I believe that we're mailing everybody a ballot. I think that that's been our practice. So there are going to be short forms that will summarize this. So just keep that in mind and know that you can go to the full language, and you can always, you're in Ward 8, but you can call me, you can email me, gbergman@burlingtonvt.gov, and ask, what does this mean? What are you talking about? You people, you don't speak English, you speak some other language. So that's sort of a step back on the short form, but we've got the firearms one. If all of you remember, Ward 8 has changed in its, the boundaries have changed, right? That's all part of redistricting. All of our voting districts are in the charter itself. Actually, the description of where the lines are drawn, what street it goes down, all of that. I mean, it's a huge thing. And it's in the charter, which means if you're going to redistrict, you have to go back to the legislature and ask for permission to have wards 2 and 3. I use my own wards districts changed from being split between Elmwood Avenue and North Street, right? So right before, it was west of Elmwood Avenue That's where Ward 3 was. Ward 2 was east of Elmwood Avenue. Now we split them north and south on North Street. Why anybody in the city of Brattleboro should not only care, why they would care, but why they should have any right to tell us in the city of Burlington where we're going to draw that line is beyond me. We are not the only city that does our districts through the charter, but other cities like Montpelier actually have in the charter that if the council changes the districts and the voters approve those, and this is the key, so voter approved the districts, then it doesn't have to go to the legislature. And that is what we are proposing this year. We are proposing to change the charter to allow the voters of Burlington, upon some process that the city council would put forward before then, before the voters get it, to approve our districts. And people have said, well, the language of it is that it would become effective immediately or whenever the language states. And that is really because depending on the timing of when that vote is there, you've got to make sure that it works. You got to make sure that the people that are elected are all of a sudden you're going to be able to have a government. You're going to be able to have ward officers. You know, you've got inspectors of election and ward clerks. So all of that process, and that's where the timing comes in and having that flexibility. So you'll see that. That is a charter change that requires voter approval and then the legislature to approve. All of our charter changes not only have to be approved by the legislature, but they have to be signed by the governor. That's why we don't have just cause eviction, because 99 instead of 100 legislators voted to override the governor's veto, meaning we were one short. Okay. The last one that we're doing is related to the charter provisions on notifications for terminations of terminations of rental agreements and rent increases. And this I probably will go right. Let me just open up right here. Let's see what we got. So right now, the charter, and this was done, my God, Jane Odell, were you here when we changed so what year was that?
I was here.
Joan, you were here. When was that? When did?
I could just tell you roughly.
That's good enough.
2003 to 2005.
Okay. So a long time ago, deep in the housing crisis, but not as bad as now, we passed a charter change that was approved by the legislature that gave the city the right to, by ordinance, regulate the amount of time that a landlord had to give notice to a tenant to that they were not going to renew the lease. And it said, and this was in times when there was no written rental agreement and notwithstanding state law. So that was one provision that we did. And then a companion piece was that, and that actually, to be specific, was that you needed to have 90 days, at least 90-day written notice when the tenancy had to be less than 2 years, and at least 120 days when the tenancy had been 2 years or more. You live in a place for 2 years or more, the landlord is gonna terminate the agreement, they got to give you 120 days. That's 4 months approximately. Okay. And if you were there for less than 2 years, they had to give you 90 days, a month and a half. The other thing we did was sort of do a mirror image of that for tenants saying that they wanted to leave. Okay, a certain sense of fairness on that. And then we also then did a requirement that rent increases had to be given with advance written notice. Okay, and I'm looking of at least 90 days. Based on the housing crisis that we have had for many years and the very hard time that people have to find housing, the dramatic increases in rents, the sort of inequity that exists between landlords and tenants, that mirror image scenario. It has been proposed, and it is being proposed to everybody in this room and all the rest of the voters to change that, to basically allow us as a city, us through the city council by ordinance to establish the requirements that landlords have to provide tenants notice prior to termination, including requirements for the content and timing of such notices, and they may include special notice requirements for vulnerable populations, including elderly tenants, tenants with disabilities, and low-income tenants. So what we have done is taken out, or what is proposed, let me put it that way, what we have done by putting it on the ballot. We've put on the ballot a proposal to take out the time limits and basically say, we'll do this by ordinance. You got to give us the flexibility to deal with the situation that we have, because we're operating with a vacancy rate of less than 1%, and people cannot find new housing in the time that the ordinance says, and it's always going to be changing. So the idea of coming back to the legislature for this, it just doesn't work for people. And the same thing is true. The provision on notices that tenants have to give is also, it does not have a time frame. It just leaves open that so that it can be done by ordinance. And the last is the same with regard to rent increases. So this is something that all three of them, including this one, all three of the charter changes have bipartisan unanimous support of the city council, for whatever that is worth. And we have had one comment in support of it from a tenant who gave us at the last meeting his horror story of trying to find a place in the timeframes and getting hit with having to pay rent, even though he was like, he had moved and like paying twice because he couldn't find his landlord had no incentive to try to rent the house because they didn't need to. I think I got that right. And I have 1, 2, 3 other city councilors here in case I missed anything that might be germane to this. And have I done what you wanted me to do?
I believe so, yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cool.
Any questions?
There you go.
I guess. Seeing none. Thank you, Councilor Bergman.
My pleasure. There you go.
All right. Any other business before the Ward 8 NPA? Yes.
Hi, I'm Matt Price. I'm running as a school commissioner for the East District. I don't know if I have an opponent, but I'm running. I just wanted to introduce myself and just say I'm here to listen for any school-related concerns or questions. It seems like this is going to be a very interesting time in Vermont with regards to the way education is going to work. A little bit about myself, background, if that'd be helpful. I live in Ward 1. I'm the father of 2 children, a 5th grader and a kindergartner here at Edmonds. So we have some connections to the Ward 8 area. I'm also a professor at the University of Vermont. I'm a clinical psychologist. I specialize in people who've experienced traumatic events and addiction. And so I have some background to bring for that. And I'm excited to sort of help our local community, specifically working with the kids and helping many of the people in our area.
So again, your name,
Matthew Price.
you're seeking
School Commissioner for the East District.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
Easy
be
enough.
around if anyone wants to ask.
Nothing to it, huh? All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Cool. Thank you all. I'll see you in about a month. Thank you, guys.
This is great.
Yeah. I hope so. I didn't have her on the agenda and now it's gonna.
Sort of on Prospect Hill, it's sort of like right by the